Salutations, Imperial citizens and battle brothers. Welcome back to another live stream. I had this one cooking for a hot minute, and Games Workshop kept releasing new detachments. So now I have to rank all of them before the new codex comes out, and we get some new detachments and completely different rules to worry about. So, yeah, so let's talk about this. First of all, my name is Brother Tobias. I am a Warhammer 40k streamer and content creator for competitive play, which means all of the tier lists and rankings we're doing are in relation to tournament play. So if you go to an RTT, a GT, or even a super major, this is the type of content I make. This is not for your casual game. So if you like a particular detachment, I will rank low here, and you're just playing with your friends in a basement. That is completely okay. This is just what this is. Salutations, Ixios. Thank you so much. I'm pretty happy with how that RTT went. Pretty happy I went undefeated. Hello, Fireball Caster. I'm glad I can keep you entertained for your work. Hello, Marching on Pod. Welcome in the chat. All right. So let's go through this. So we're talking about Ultramarines here, and we have 17 detachments to talk about. Now, some of these are the 1 DP detachments, some of these are 3 DP, and I will just rank all of them in their like own context. And for let me add a row down here, and it is blue because I want to make a tier for current topic so we can talk about, so I can just move something here and then people have to just have to skip through the video to see which detachment we're talking about. So what was I saying? We are talking about Ultramarines here, so we will not be talking about Forge Father Seekers or the White Scars stuff. We are talking about the actual codex Space Marine detachments with all the expansions, but only for Ultramarines. So let me open the Monitorum field manual too, because I might have to check the detachment points just to make sure, and which disposition a detachment has. So, what am I looking for in a good detachment? And this might be a strange question to ask, but I think it makes perfect sense to ask that question. So, first of all, we want to make sure our detachment has flexible rules that apply to a lot of units. So we want things like damage buffs, defensive buffs, reactive rules like reactive moves. We want an army rule, a detachment rule, or most of the stratagems to work on as many units as possible, because the more niche you go, like a detachment that only buffs Phobos infantry, wonder what that could be, is a lot worse than a detachment that buffs all vehicles, because even though the vehicle detachment doesn't buff infantry, the the vehicle definition is just more applicable than just Phobos infantry, and that is basically what we're gonna do here. And last of all, I really value the disposition a detachment has in 11th edition. So depending on your disposition, you might get a higher rating just by default. And I also care about how many detachment points the detachment costs. So if you have a very good detachment that is 3 points, it has to be really good, because otherwise you are fighting with the potential option to have 3 extra strats or an extra rule on some of your units, and that's just what we're gonna do. So let's talk about our first detachment of the night. I hope everyone is ready for this. Our first detachment, I scrambled these together so I just did some stuff. If you guys want the thumbnails I made for all of these, just hit me up in the comments. I'll upload them publicly. Let's talk about the Stormlands Task Force. Now, Stormlands gives your entire army a buff, which is advance and charge and fall back and charge. Note, you do not have an option to fall back and shoot, and you do not have an option to fall back and charge. Excuse me, to advance and shoot, except for a stratagem. You can use a strat to do advance and shoot. Now, the Stormlands has a niche. It is a very, very strong detachment that is held back by two things. One, it doesn't have a slot open for an extra detachment, it's a free pointer. Two, the disposition is disruption, and disruption can be a bit tricky to make work as far as a playable army goes, because the disruption primary has a horrendously bad matchup into recon, and it also has a horrendous matchup into I think not priority, it's take and hold. Yeah, take and hold. The take and hold matchup is a bit bad. The matchup into recon is awful, but the matchup into Purge the Foe is actually really good on disruption. So what does the Stormlands actually do? Let's start with some of the bad stuff. You have one stratagem you will never use, which is reroll charges and lands on a mounted unit. You will probably never use this. And you have 4 enhancements, and you probably won't use a single one of them because you don't have time to bloat up infantry units in this detachment. It's just not something you're about to do. What do you actually get though? You have advance in charge all the time. You have auto advance 6 for all of your flying vehicles, and this is what the sauce is about. You have a strat that gives you -1 to hit, wound, on a flying vehicle or mounted unit. And this is obviously what you're using on the Stormraven gunship. The Stormraven gunship is a hover vehicle, which means it can fly over terrain without any penalties. It is very easily to give it cover by just putting one of the wing tips behind like a little wall or like a container. And then you have a -2 to hit, -1 to wound vehicle with -1 damage built in. That is pretty good. And the Stormraven also shoots incredibly hard with Oath of Moment. You can very easily give it ignore cover with the land speeders, which are also flying vehicles. So this is a perfect detachment for storm speeders, land speeders, and the Stormraven gunship. And for that reason, I'm honestly gonna put the Stormlands in strong choice. Part of the reason for this is this detachment relies a lot on Robute Gilliman, and the chances are almost 100% Robute Gilliman is about to receive the mobile keyword in an upcoming FAQ. So if Robute Gilliman can walk through walls again and threaten heroics for free, and you can use your discount strat on the auto advance 6 thing, then it is pretty good. Now the downside is you are limited in the units you can take. I've played 2 Stormlands games and I was pretty impressed with how well it performed, but you do have to build your armies a bit different, I believe. I think in order to build a good Stormlands, you have to play a lot of pieces. You bring one Outrider squad maybe to like screen and move block. You bring a bunch of land speeders to do stuff. I did not bring a Victrix card in my second game. I replaced my Victrix card with Titus and Heroes just because it's cheaper, and it allowed me to get a second unit of incursors into the list, and that's what we're doing. So yeah, I think Stormlands is an A tier. It's 3 points. It has not the best disposition, but in practice, I promise you, it actually plays pretty good. Next, we have Armored Spear Tip. This is the Land Raider detachment, and this is the one that was completely broken on release, where it was like, turn 1, you can get a Land Raider full of Victrix into your opponent's backfield, and that was just what it did. And it doesn't do that anymore. It got nerfed considerably. What did it do again? I think you can Deep Strike and Scout a Land Raider. Scout is honestly not that bad, because it means you can redeploy into reserves and then deploy it wherever you want before the game begins. That's actually not bad. But yeah, it has some issues. The foremost being the Armored Spear Tip is a take and hold with 3 detachment points. So you can't ally anything else in this detachment, and it is take and hold. And your Land Raiders are not exactly the best units to hold objectives with. So for that reason, I believe this is a bad detachment. I don't think it's gonna do a whole lot. So let's look at what the other rules are. If you are in a transport, it has the Scout 6. So yeah, you can deploy one of the Land Raiders in reserve with Scout, and then you can immediately deploy it on the board instead of doing the Scout move. So that's kind of cool. And there's like the auto explode, I believe. There is some desperate escape stuff, but in like just in general, I don't think it's that good of a detachment, because building around Land Raiders, I think you just want to fix the mobility issue, and in that case, you want to try one of the other detachments. For that reason, I'm gonna put it in pretty weak. Now, there is a way you could use it where you want to just spam Land Raiders, maybe, and just stat check people out, and then you could argue for has a niche, but I think the nerfs were too much. Next, we have the Orbital Assault Force. The Orbital Assault Force gives, I think, 2 of your units Deep Strike before the game begins. It has a taken hold, how do I say it, disposition, and it gives you reroll once to hidden wound if you deployed this turn. So there are also a bunch of strats in here. I think the one that gives you lethal and sustained within 18 inches is pretty decent. And other than that, you get redeploy on a Terminator unit once per game, which is like not the greatest thing. You have the enhancement to give yourself Scout, which is pretty good because again you can deploy your unit in reserve and then deploy it on the first turn if you don't want to do the thing. Salutations, Amori. Hello, Mighty Ilosan. Welcome to the stream. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of Orbital Assault Force. You never want to play with the drop pod, in my opinion, because the drop pods are just, they actively make the whole list a bit worse just by taking them. But other than that, is there anything we can do with this? Let me look at the strats one more time. So yeah, you have a 6-inch piling consolidate, which currently doesn't work correctly. You can embark into a transport if it was not set up this turn, which is like, it's a one way to get your reroll once to wound going. You only get the hit rerolls if you disembark from a drop pod, which is probably not gonna happen. Auto sense, yeah, drop pods like, yeah, no, I think this is a, this one goes also in weak, but I think it's better than the Land Raider one. You could do some stuff with Inceptors, but take and hold wants you to hold objectives, and this one doesn't do that. It gives your Librarian Conclave. You could ally in reroll once to wound, which is not great because they already get that rule from the Librarians. So yeah, I'm gonna put this one in C. Let's take care of the Headhunter Task Force. Now, this one is actually not bad. The Headhunter Task Force is a vehicle detachment, pretty similar to Ironstorm, but in my opinion, it actually has a bunch of good stuff going for it. Let me look at it again. So, you can always auto advance 6 if you want to. But if you don't auto advance, you can reroll damage rolls, which is a really, really good rule on Predators, Gladiators, Vindicators. It got a lot better, especially with the new stratagem rules where you can't stack reroll once to wound as easily as you used to anymore, and that's pretty good. So it has, what is the disposition on this one? I don't know this one by head. This one is a bit weird. Spearpoint, no, Headhunter Task Force. Where is it? Headhunter. There it is. Priority assets. This is not a bad one to have, in my opinion. I think priority assets is not the worst one. Yeah. Ventress can give it can give a deep strike to most things, so you don't need to run the Orbital Assault Force. Maybe once Uriel Ventress is out of the codex, maybe this could be an avenue to explore. Yeah. It lets you deep strike Devastator Centurions. That is true, but you can't redeploy them. And that's the whole point. If you get your Devastator Centurions down once, that is like cool. But what the hell do you do after that? They just stand around and don't do anything. They do reroll hits though. That's nice, I guess. So yeah, Spear Point. Yeah, you get the tank ace keywords, and then these guys are characters, so you can make Vindicator characters, which is pretty awesome. Um, yeah, you can get some invulns and reroll wounds and stuff. So yeah, the enhancements are pretty good. I think you always take 3 of them just to have like one of them is the Eldar reroll thing where you get 1 hit, 1 wound. So you just have Iron Storm on one of your big Rapexes or something. That's pretty awesome. You have Armor of Contempt, that is pretty good. You have a fallback and shoot, which is also awesome. You have an assault stratagem? Is there a way to advance and shoot? I don't think you do. So this is 1 knock against it, so you have this way to auto advance 6, but you can't actually shoot. Oh no, wait, there is. There's one excuse me. There's one enhancement with an aura that gives you assault. So yeah, this one is priority assets. I think priority assets is not a bad disposition. Yeah, thank you, Ixios. I just saw it. I skipped over it because I'm an idiot. So what do you do with this? You build a vehicle focused list, and then you can either just ally in um the Fulguris to also buff your flying vehicles, which you don't normally buff in this detachment, just to make everything buff. And you could also consider Librarius, so you have good infantry in addition to your big units. So keep in mind only the tank ace units get it, and only non-flying vehicles get and no walkers. No walkers and no flying get the tank ace. So you can't have a tank ace Storm Raven. That doesn't work. But yeah, I think this is a good one. I think this one has a niche. I think it's pretty fine. I think it fights a bit with Iron Storm for space, but I think it's good. I think this one is fine. It has a niche. If you want to play a vehicle spam list, I lost my train of thought. The reason why priority assets is pretty good for vehicle spam lists is because you just run a few action units, just like the combi lieutenant, the Gravis captain, something like that, and those guys will do your action while the rest of your army just focuses on holding one objective and shooting your opponent off the other objectives. So you just need to kill something, hold something, and do an action. And you do need all of these things usually, but that is what that means. And yeah, I think it has a niche. I think I'm down to explore the Headhunter Task Force a bit more. The Blades of Ultramar. Let's talk about the Blades of Ultramar. Now, in the beginning, people were a bit down on priority assets. I think right now, priority assets is actually pretty good. The Blade of Ultramar is just so damn flexible, and that's what makes it so good. There's a bit of a thing going on where we should probably talk about the Gladius next just to get it out of the way, but I could save it. So effectively it's the same thing as the Gladius. You trade your fight on death for a -1 to wound against equal or higher toughness, which is insane. This is the way to make Repulsor Executioners work, in my opinion. If you don't play in Blades, they die way too fast without the -1 save they used to get. I think that's a big problem. Blades also gives you multiple doctrines if you have Marnius Calgar in your army, which means as long as Calgar is alive, you can do Tactical Doctrine twice or something, and that's honestly pretty awesome. Salutation, Imerixis. Hello, Ron Strokes. Late to the show? No, we still have 12 detachments to go through. No worries. We got some stuff to do. So yeah, Blades has the priority assets primary, but you do have the Combi Lieutenant and the Gravis Captain, so you are very good at these things. You can run Land Speeders, you can run big shooting intercessor bricks with fire discipline, you can run Land Raider Redeemers, you can run the old triple ballistas, double vindicator, and a Reaper build. Right now, I think this is honestly one of the best detachments to play against orcs, because you have a bunch of units you can buff up with strats to actually kill 20 boys, which a lot of other detachments and even armies can't do. So yeah, I think the Blades of Ultramar remain in S tier. And the question now is, where do we put the Gladius when we get to it? So yeah. Next, we have Ceramite Sentinels, and this is the one I'm gonna make the uh, the fellows in chat upset because I hate this detachment. I don't understand why people like it. I don't get it. Let me look at this. So yeah, Ceramite Sentinel. So basically, the way it works, if a Space Marine unit touches a terrain feature, which is now also objectives, they get reroll ones to hit and wound, which is pretty cool actually. So you just need to touch the terrain, and then you get rerolls, which is good because you are also on an objective, because that means you're scoring points, of course. Also, if you don't arrive from Deep Strike and you are within a terrain feature and didn't move more than 3, so the new heavy works well with this, you are also entrenched, and being entrenched gives you some rules for these stratagems. They get slightly better, like your fight on death has a +1, and that's what it does and stuff. So yeah, this detachment, in my opinion, lacks a bit of depth. You have a revive stratagem, which goes super well on a Gravis Captain. This one is pretty awesome. You have a thing that gives you fallback and shoot, or fallback and charge and stuff. Like, that is like okay. You can do an action, which is a bit counter synergistic, because Ceramite Sentinels is a free DP detachment, so you can't ally anything in, and your primary is taken hold, which I have two issues with. Issue number one, you don't have any actions to do, so your action and shoot stratagem is kind of worthless. There's only 2 action secondaries in the deck, only 2, and you have a 1 in 9 chance to draw one of them, and that is like, if you do, just use a scout squad. It's not that big of a deal. My other problem is this detachment doesn't have anything substantial in terms of defense. You don't get a single thing outside of Armor of Contempt in defense. I do like the +1 OC, that one is pretty awesome. I also like that it is in the command phase and not at the end of the command phase. So unlike the Reclamation Force one, this one actually helps you to steal an objective. But yeah, there's a fight on death, there's a bunch of damage buffs, so you can build. I do like that this detachment buffs everything and not just like vehicles or Phobos units, and for that reason I can't put it into like C tier. But the fact that it is triple points and taken hold is a bit of a letdown in my opinion. We have one in Twitch chat here. Hello, Magic D&D. 2 of your free 40k armies have to make way for 1 new army. Do you go 30k themed Red Corsairs? That sounds pretty cool. Or do you paint up some Alpha Marines so you can play whatever you want? Honestly, you can do the same thing with the Red Corsairs, Magic D&D. If you just paint your guys as Red Corsairs with no spikes, you can just play them as normal Space Marines too. No one's gonna stop you. You can play whatever you want as long as all of your war gear and all of your units are legit. That's honestly my suggestion to you. Now, where do we put Ceramite Sentinels? I think, yeah, this Fists not good for us, but nice for Fists. I think, yeah. I mean, the obvious synergy Imerix has been noticing is obviously units with heavy really like this detachment because they hit on 2s with real 1s, and that's kind of cool. But yeah, I think I'm giving this a B out of respect because so many people like it, but it's not my detachment. It's not for me. Next, we have the Bastion Task Force, and this one is pretty interesting. Now, in the codex, it's only a 2 DP detachment, so you can ally something with it, which I really like because librarians can join all of your battle line units. You can make one of your Victrix units with Sicarius and a normal captain into a battle line squad, which is awesome. That gives you effectively you can run 2 Victrix unit with advance and charge, which is kind of awesome. So yeah, what does it actually do? The Bastion Task Force. All of your battle lines get buffs. What buffs? Was it rerolls? There was something about rerolls, right? Where is it? Here we go. So yeah, all of your battle line units have fallback, shoot and charge, and advance shoot and charge. And if you target something with a battle line unit, every other unit that targets that unit get reroll ones to hit and stuff. So this one is mostly used in Black Templars because they have good battle line, but I think this one has a niche because you have ways to make things into battle line with the enhancement. Ultramarines have good units. You have a way to gain command points. You could play something with Gilliman, which I can honestly pretty like. You have all of the tools you want to do your thing, and I think this one has a niche in a team setting. I think if you want to go like with 60 heavy intercessors or something like that, or you just want to spam bodies, you can also attach the Wardens of Ultramar to like assault intercessors or regular intercessors, and then you have another battle line unit that is actually a better unit than a battle line unit. And I really like that. So I think this one has a niche, so I'm putting it in B tier. I think in teams, just coming up with 60 heavy intercessors and just sitting on all the objectives and doing stuff against like orcs, this would be like a hard counter to Green Tide, because Green Tide can't kill a heavy intercessor squad without Gaskell. It just doesn't happen. The -1 to wound effect and the toughness 6 is just insurmountable here. Yeah, putting it in B tier. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the Vanguard Spearhead. Now, today we had a pretty good result in one tournament, I believe. Mark Hurtle played a Vanguard Spearhead with some good stuff, and I was tempted to give it a really bad rating, but I'm not a big fan of the Vanguard, and I want to explain why. So the Vanguard Spearhead was nerfed to only give you cover outside of 12 instead of -1 to hit, which is a lot worse. And most of the stratagems are just kind of weird right now. So basically, if your opponent rolls a charge and they pick one of your units to charge, you then move away. It is so strangely done. It was very, very weirdly errata. The charge strat is pretty weird. Infiltrating a unit is nice. Putting something back into reserve is nice. You can do some stuff with the Laborious Conclave. You can have 2 up-down Sternguard units with double oath, which is what it was used for. So Mark Hurtle just won with it, and it was pretty niche. I do think the up-down is nice, and I do think the fact that it is 2 DP and has reconnaissance as the primary is also pretty nice, because recon, in my opinion, is a bit underrated as a disposition. So yeah. What doesn't this have? There's no fallback shoot, there's no nothing, and none of the 1 DPs actually give you fallback and shoot. There's a fallback and charge, but only for Terminators effectively. So yeah, I know Mark Hurtle won, but I don't like the Vanguard right now. One of my biggest problems with it is you can't up-down a unit on turn 1 anymore. So this means you are very vulnerable to just getting pushed by aggressive armies. You can't use Centurions as effectively as you used to, because previously it used to work like this. Your Centurions would shoot something in cover, but you have +1 AP from the strat, so effectively there was no cover. And you would also get reroll 1s to wound and hit. Excuse me, you have reroll 1s to hit and twin linked on your last cannons. And you would hit on 2s because of the strat. So you hit on 2s, rerolling 1s, and now you do more AP, but all of your 2s probably miss the target unless it's on an objective, which I'm not feeling so good right now. I honestly want to put the Vanguard in pretty weak. And I realize Mark Hurtle just won an event with this, but I think Mark Hurtle is not a normal Space Marine player. I think in the hands of a normal guy like me, the Vanguard is just washed. It's just not doing it anymore. Next we have the Firestorm. The Firestorm has been maligned by me as one of the worst detachments in the entire codex. All of your units have Assault and +1 Strength within 12, which is pretty awesome. And half of your stratagems are complete garbage. They all suck. They're horrendously bad. I think the +1 to hit when getting out of a vehicle within 12 inches if the transport hit the target is like the worst strat in the entire game. That strat is so bad. Man. However, Firestorm is pretty cool because it only has 2 detachment points, and it is a Firestorm FFFFF. Just want to double check if I'm not wrong. It is Purge the Foe. So this is one of the few ways you can get a Purge the Foe army in Space Marines. Especially in Codex, there's only one other option. So if you want to Purge the Foe, you can do some stuff. Yes, Forgefather Seekers is cool. The problem is you can't play that if you're an Ultramarine. So you have to play worse Forgefather Seekers with worse stratagems, but in exchange, you get Victrix Guard, which don't do anything in this detachment. You get Marnius Calgar, who does a whole lot in this detachment, and you can do some stuff. Yeah, Vanguard with Conclave allows you to play Recon and have lots of... That is true, yes. I do agree with that, Amori. That is... The fact that you can flex into Recon as your primary is honestly awesome, because the Vanguard plays Recon pretty well. Yeah, Firestorm. Yeah, so you do your thing. You just run your Redeemer, you run your Calgar, you do your things, and that's just kind of what you do. I think the Firestorm is completely fine. I'm putting it around the same space as Ceramite Sentinels. I think it has a niche. I think it's good. Next, we have Librarius Conclave. Librarius Conclave doesn't have any stratagems, and it only buffs your Librarius, or excuse me, your Psycho units, because there is some stuff going on. And yeah, it's hard to tell it, but this is everywhere right now. People are running the Fusillade brick in everything that can run it, and this is honestly one of the things that is probably going to get nerfed, because not just because of the Fusillade brick, I also think that +2 movement on all of your good infantry and the reroll ones to hidden wound are just amazing rules. Also, people are underrating the up-down enhancement just in general. I think you can do some really good stuff here. And yeah, I would... and you can give recon to a bunch of stuff. Yeah, it's gonna get hit, probably. I would agree with this. Also, Ultramarines probably have the best Librarius Conclave, because we have Tigurius, who is the best Psyker in Space Marines, no contest. And we have the Wardens of Ultramar, who can turn any unit into a Psyker unit, which is also awesome. So yeah. So what is going to happen with this? So obviously, if I rank Librarius Conclave high, I'm not ranking it high because the Conclave by itself is overpowered. It is a 1 point thing, which can slot into a lot of armies. And Recon, good primary. Yeah, we're putting the Librarius Conclave in S. It's just so good. Next, we have Anvil Siege Force, and this one breaks my heart. Now, I have to... If I put Ceramite Sentinels low because I don't like it, I can't put Anvil high because I like Anvil. Man, Anvil needed an FAQ or an errata or anything, because right now the detachment rule hasn't been adjusted to the new heavy keyword, and if it had... If you could move 3 inches and get +1 to wound on your guys, I would be over the moon. Anvil Siege Force is legit so interesting. It has so many good tools. Rigid Discipline is probably the best stratagem in the entire codex if you know how to use it correctly. You get so much movement out of this strat and just screw over your opponent. You have a +1 OC strat. You have a way to run a big feel no pain infantry unit. You have a way to reroll wounds against something. You have a way to 5-up crits. This is probably the only detachment you can run Desolation Marines in a competitive list, because you can activate crit 5s on them and then hit on 4s with crit 5s, which is the same thing as hitting on 2s. So if you can get a spotter down, you can still frag people behind walls, and that is just amazing. Yeah, the problem is just it wasn't updated for the new rules, and it is a taken hold, I'm pretty sure. Anvil Siege Force is taken hold. It must be, right? Yeah, Anvil Siege Force is taken hold, which is good. This is honestly what this detachment wants to do. The problem is it is a taken hold with 2 DP, and I can't think of anything I want to run in this detachment as a bonus, because the speeders, the librarians, and the scouts, they don't buff any of the things I want to do in Anvil, which is just staying still. Now, the Hammer Strike is obviously good because you want to ignore cover and stuff, but it doesn't really synergize with each other. So, for that reason, I have to unfortunately be honest with myself and put the Anvil Siege Force in D tier. It breaks my heart. I really tried, everyone. I really, really tried, but it needed an update. It needs something with the movement. You need to be able to move 3 inches and get your rules. That is what I need. And then you need one thing for one DP that actually supports the game plan of Anvil. So yeah, I'm putting this one in D. It's unfortunate. Next, we have the Gladius Task Force. Now, this is the counterpart to the Blades of Ultramar. It is worse strictly in the detachment rules because you don't get the double doctrines off of Marnius Calgar, which means you can run Gilliman instead, which you can do. But then keep in mind you don't have the -1 to wound because that is switched, and that means Repulsor Executioners are worse, in my opinion, in this detachment. However, you still have all of your goodies. You have your doctrines for advanced and charged, blah, blah, blah. You have your ignore cover stratagem. You have your land stratagem. Fight on Death is amazing on Gilliman. Gilliman made it into back into a high tier because he can walk through walls in the relatively near future, which is awesome. And basically, the question between Blades and Gladius, in my opinion, is just: do you run Calgar? Do you run Repulsor Executioners? If you want to run something like a very MSU based thing, or you just want to play the old triple Vindicator list, I think the Gladius might actually be better just because Gilliman really wants Fight on Death. But I think Blades and Gladius are so close, it's not even a contest. So yeah, it's also priority assets, which is good because priority assets works well with the Gladius game plan. And which one is better? In my opinion, Gladius is worse because the difference is one strat, and the strat in the Gladius side is more niche and needs to pay 2 command points. Now, in the correct matchup, the Fight on Death is way better than the -1 to wound, but you don't use it all the time. If you run into a shooting matchup, it's just useless, kind of. And for that reason, I'm putting Gladius in S tier, but it's behind Blades. I think Blades is better in most circumstances. Next, we have Subversion Assets. This one is a head scratcher. So, Subversion Assets says, I don't even know what the rule is. Something with scouts. I know what it does other than that stuff. So what does it actually do? So all of your scouts can detect units, and then they have +3 detection range. So the way you would use this, I guess, is to play a gunline type army. Like maybe you run one of the vehicle detachments like Headhunter or Ironstorm, and then you play the subversion assets so your incursor squads can give you 15-inch spots. That sounds a bit shaky. So other than that, the things are just not ideal. You can turn any Primaris character, any Phobos character into a lone op, which is like, why would you do that? You can just run a lone op lieutenant, and he's the best thing you can do. You can upgrade a Phobos unit to have +1 to hit. The only unit this is remotely important on against hidden units, it's +1 to hit against hidden units, is you can put it on Reavers, and then they hit on 2s in combat unless your opponent fired Overwatch, which is hilarious. But yeah, that's kind of it. You can do an action and shoot, but you can only do that with a scout squad or a Phobos unit. I guess that is kind of okay if you do want to run some incursors, and then you run you do a cleanse and then still get the +1 to hit. You have a thing where you can stay hidden if you shoot, which is good to keep your incursor safe. And then you have the thing where you can make your unit harder to see, which is honestly pretty good on infiltrators. So if you have an infiltrator squad and you pay 1 command point, you effectively give them the rule from the librarian, so you don't have to pay the 70 points. So yeah, I think overall this is bad, But the one situation I could see it being used is if you combine it with Headhunter and Ironstorm to give, and then you run like double or triple incursors, and you just use the rules from this to make your incursors better, and that's what I think. Yeah. The first company task force. Now let's start with the good. You have a stratagem for 1 CP that gives one of your veteran units -1 damage if you get charged. And you have a stratagem to make an objective sticky with one of your veteran units. Sounds pretty good. Let's talk about everything else that's bad about it. The first company task force is horrendous. You have a once per game detachment rule. It is a reroll once to wound, once per game, which is bad. You have a priority asset, which is not the worst. It's not the worst for Space Marines, just in general. Yeah, Terminators are still bad, and if they're not bad, you want to buff them up with some Librarians. But thankfully, First Company is a 2DP detachment, so you can ally something in. But the detachment rule is just too weak. The enhancements are ass, and that is just kind of what the problem is. You only buff veteran infantry. The new Vanguard veterans are not playable yet, so you can't even run those. And yeah, Victrix Guard is not veterans. Like, if you run Victrix Guard, you need to run Calgar to get most of your strats, which is unfortunate. So, yeah, I think the first company task force is still just bad. It's better than before because you can ally someone in, but there's no fallback and shoot, there's no nothing. It's just bad. I think it's worse than Anvil and Subversion assets. Yeah, first company remains the unbeaten worst thing ever. Speaking of something that is not the worst thing ever, we come to the Fulgurous Task Force. This one is amazing. All of your land speeders and storm speeders get turn 1 deep strike just by default. You have a reactive move strat, and you have a up-down strat, and you have some weird thing. Mysterium Xarxes Victrix Guard are veterans. You are correct, but they don't have the Blade Guard, Terminator, or Assault Terminator or Stern Guard keyword. Go back to the first company task force. The stratagems are specifically worded to only work on Terminators, Blade Guard, and Stern Guard. You cannot use -1 damage on Victrix. You cannot use up-down on Victrix. You cannot use the stupid +1 to hit on Victrix. It's just bad. Alright. The only weakness in Fulgurous is having to collect speeders, which takes space. Yes, I managed to cram 4 speeders into my transport case, and that was an act. That wasn't easy to do. I think that was honestly pretty rough. So yeah, Fulgurous Task Force. If you recall the datasheet tier list, I put all of the good speeders, the Hammer Strike and the Land Speeder, into S tier, and the Thunder Strike is not far behind in B tier because +1 to wound on anything is honestly pretty good, or anything you want it against. So yeah, this is pretty awesome. Fulgurous goes really well with most detachments. You can use it to fill some sort of hole. For example, Fulgurous and Vanguard lets you up down something on turn 1, which you couldn't do before. Vanguard has no support for vehicles, so just having a vehicle that supports itself with its own detachment is great. You get something to reactive move if your detachment doesn't have reactive moves. So yeah, I think the Fulgurous Task Force is amazing, and it is potentially S tier, but I do want to put it in very strong for now, because right now it's a bit overshadowed by the Librarius Conclave. I think as soon as the Conclave gets a nerf, people will start using speeders everywhere. Yeah. I'm putting this ahead of the Stormlands here. Fulgurous Task Force in A tier. Very strong. Alright. Battle Brothers, Imperial Citizens. May I interest you in your Lord and Savior, Captain Titus. This is the Reclamation Force. The Reclamation Force came out in towards the end, like in the last 5 months of 10th edition, and I read this detachment and I fell in love with it. This detachment is so much fun. It is amazing. However, in 10th, it had some very noticeable drawbacks and weaknesses where the unit selection just didn't quite work with the strats, and there was just a few things missing. Like there was no assault, there was no shooting buffs. There's just something you have to do, and turns out that something was making it 2 points. So let's start out. Reclamation Force. If your infantry is on an objective and controls it, and you are shot by something with higher strength, -1 to wound. Or if you are a Titus unit, -1 to wound. Also, if you attack something in melee and it touches an objective marker with a pixel of its base, +1 AP. This is amazing. You effectively get one of the Votan and one of the Chaos Space Marine rules just on your units. Just they are active whenever you can make them active. And unlike some things where there are a lot of detachments in Warhammer 40k where you get buffs on an objective, and these detachments used to be a bit poor because your opponent can just not touch the objectives. But Reclamation Force is a take and hold, and in order to get you off of the objectives, your opponent has to enter the objectives. And if your opponent enters the objectives, you charge them, and then you beat their ass with +1 AP. Yes. Yes, the +2 charge and +1 attack stratagem is probably the best strat in this entire detachment, and it's arguably one of the best strats in this entire tier list. The +1 this stratagem, +1 attack and +2 to charge, is amazing for a multitude of reasons. Give me one. This detachment doesn't have advance and charge. So this is a way for you to extend your threat range, because yeah, a 6-inch moving melee unit isn't that scary, but if it's a 6-inch moving unit with +2 to charge, that is honestly the same thing as rolling a bad advance. And furthermore, what makes this so awesome is you can use it out of Deep Strike to have a 7-inch charge. You can use it in combination with an enhancement or a Terminator Captain to have reroll charges. And you can put yourself 2.1 inches away from an enemy and for 1 command point say, I will not fail this charge. Because you cannot fail by rolling a double 1. If you roll a double 1 with the strat active, you move 4 inches. So you cannot fail the charge. It doesn't matter what happens, you're in. Even if you have a -1 to your charge, still in. You're still in. And that is an incredible tool. So, what is the purpose of Reclamation Force? I've just finished a 3-0 by combining it with Speedos. Speedos are a good ally for Rec Force because you make up for the mobility and shooting problem. And that is what I went for. However, you also have the option to ally Librarius Conclave, because if you have a Titus Warden unit, that unit can now just have +2 to move and +2 to charge, or you can have rerolls, or, and this is my favorite little interaction, the ability, the telepathy ability, which gives incoming ranged attacks -1 strength. If your Titus unit with toughness 4 gets shot by a strength 4 gun, you reduce it to -1, so it's strength 3, and then you give it -1 to wound, and then they wound you on 6s. If your Titus unit gets shot by strength 4 guns, while telepathy is active, they wound you on 6s. That is awesome. That is so good. It's unbelievable. Yeah. You also buff Tigurius out of the wazoo, because your unit is now +1, is now in combination of being -1 to hit, -1 ballistic skill from cover, and -1 to wound. You also now have the -1 strength, or the +2 move, or all of that stuff. And free heroic is always nice. So yeah. Yeah, Reclamation Force, the +1 OC stratagem, Bailey Jones, completely correct, is also amazing. You can't use it in the command phase. To deny primary, unfortunately, because the timing is end of command phase, but you can use it proactively to push into an objective, to control it, and to deny your opponent from turning off your ability. Yeah. Reclamation Force is my favorite detachment, and I'm gonna put it at very strong at the top. I can see potential for this to go into S tier. In my heart, it is S tier, but if we have to objectively talk about it, it needs something allied in order to be S tier. If it's just by itself, there is just a little bit missing to be like a fully realized detachment. But it is by far the most fun I had playing Space Marines in this edition, which doesn't say much because the edition hasn't happened for long. But yeah, amazing. If there's one thing I want to complain about Rec Force, the reactive move is a bit junky. Like if your opponent falls back, you can make a move of d6+1, which is a bit like I've used it to good effect before, but it can also just be like kind of whatever. It can just not do anything. And this detachment does not have a good enhancement for the Gravis Captain. So unfortunately, the Gravis Captain has to stay home. Now, last but not least, Iron Storm's Spearhead. Excuse me. Oh, wait, what happened? Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Damn. Sorry for the sneeze. I thought I muted this. I muted the wrong thing. It's because OBS added this new button, which is like enable monitoring, which is so annoying. But yeah, okay. Excuse me for the sneeze. I'm sorry, Battle Brothers. All right, Iron Storm Spearhead. This is your second vehicle detachment. This one is also pretty good. All of your units, not just vehicles, all of your units have one reroll to hit or wound or damage. So you can pick which one you want to reroll. And you have a bunch of strats that are pretty good. You have an auto explode, you have a shoot back if you get hurt, you have a sustained hits, which is crit 5s on a vehicle if the target is injured and stuff. So this is your detachment if you don't want to play Warhammer 40k. If you want to play unit crunch and calculator and Excel spreadsheet, this is your detachment. You run your Repexes, your gladiators, your speeders, you ally in something, you purge the foe, no need to hold any objectives, you get your incursors in there to give you +1 to hit, and then you just table your opponent with guns. You have double oath, you can shoot. What more do you want? And so yeah, Iron Storm, it sounds so simple because I don't have much to say about it, but it has everything it needs. Like it has damage buffs, it has a defensive enhancement, it has a mobility enhancement, and if you need more mobility, you can just ally in the Fulguris to have all of your speeders get double dip buffs. So yeah, I think Iron Storm is better than Headhunter, but not by that much. I think Iron Storm also A tier. I think Iron Storm is very strong. It's boring, but it's just effective. And yeah, that's what the tier list is all about. You can take your screenshots, Battle Brothers, and with that, we are done with the stream. Do I want to rearrange any of this? I don't think so. You could convince me to drop Stormlands down into B and to drop to raise Vanguard into B because of Mark Hurtle's performance, but in my opinion, I think this is fine. Again, if you are a Ceramite Sentinel fan, it's just kind of what it is. Hello, Dominic. Which detachment benefits aggressors and eradicators best? For aggressors, the answer is Stormlands, in my opinion. Because you want your aggressors to advance, shoot, charge, and do both. Because the problem with the aggressors, the Centurions, and the Brutalis Dreadnought is you are a melee unit and a shooting unit, and you pay for both. But if you advance in Gladius, you can only do one of the things. And for that reason, I think the best detachment for aggressors is actually the Stormlands. Especially now that the new cover rules are a lot more friendly towards the AP1 guns. In the past, that was a bit of a struggle. So if you want to run 6 aggressors with a Biologius and give it the fallback and shoot enhancement, I think that's a good play. I don't think that's bad, honestly. You could do that. And that's that. Eradicators, you mean just in general, or do you mean the heavy bolters or the multi-melters? I think eradicators work in every detachment as like a little unit you can just rapid ingress into melter range and kill something with. Yeah, I think what is the best detachment for that? I think eradicators still work pretty well in Vanguard. You infiltrate them with Calgar to have your turn one melter drop. You can finally deep strike them with Uriel Ventris and have a unit with +2 damage now out of deep strike, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, it is pretty difficult to get all 6 into melter range, so your mileage may vary. The multi melter is a bit worse now because it hits on 5s against cover, so that is something. But yeah, I think eradicators are just a decent unit in most lists. If you have a Gladius and you want to run if you want to run a small squad of eradicators in your Gladius just as a reserve threat that comes in and then shoots something with the melter, perfectly fine. I think that's something I would consider if I was in a Gladius. But in terms of direct support, I don't think there's anything that really buffs eradicators that much. All right. With that said, courage and honor, Battle Brothers. We march from a crag. Thank you so much for attending the stream. Thank you so much for chatting, and consider giving my tournament report a bit of a view here, because I worked pretty hard on that 3-0, and I will not get I will not be silenced about it. So yeah, have a good night. Thank you so much for tuning in. Courage and honor.